Hey, Glaz here. This is my glow shelf. Nothing special. It's just two shelves on a wall. I've got some grow lights and just some regular like hardware clamp lights that are literally plugged into the well, not the wall, but a surge protector thing. Anyways, just put a bunch of my plants outside. As you can see, what I have left, I've got a cactus needs to be repotted. I have a Black Knight succulent that's actually doing pretty decently, and basil. I just cut this back a bit, but it's also looking pretty sad. But I thought this was an opportunity for me to try something that I've always wanted to try, and that's do a little bit of hydroponics. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to repot this cactus into this pot that the basil is in, and the basil is going to be going into basically a Kratky container, so a self-contained growing environment. So I got the things that I need to try to get this going. I got a bunch of mason jars. That's going to be my reservoir that has my nutrients in it. I needed a gallon container, and I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on something, so I just got some distilled water. My local supermarket sells these. So this is a gallon container with water that's going to be usable for this purpose. And then I got just a Brita filtered water bottle so that when I'm out of water in the gallon container, I can refill it with filtered water. We have aluminum foil. That is going to be used to wrap these mason jars so that light doesn't get in them. Otherwise, it's just a great environment for an algal bloom, and that's not what we want. We want all of those nutrients going to the basil, not to the algae. Grow block. This is rock wool. Most hydroponic stores have this. You can also get it just as like big pieces and cut it up. You can put seedlings in here, or cuttings is probably what I'm going to do. And it's just something to kind of give a little bit of support and hold water and nutrients close to the bottom of your plant where the roots are going to start. You'll see what we're going to do with this. I saw a use of this for this method online that I thought was pretty cool. We have a cat here and a dog. I have just a eyedropper that's going to be used to get some of the nutrients so that I can measure it and get it into this water here. This is one of the nutrients I have. I also have a bottle of CalMag, so calcium, magnesium, because basil needs to have that supplemented even more than a lot of other plants do. And then we also have here our growing nets. These are 3mm just net cups. The plants, the rock wool will go right in the bottom, and then that'll be covered with my growing medium. And this will go right into our mason jar. And then over here next to the dog is what I'm using as a growing medium. These are expanded clay pebbles. I'm going to have to rinse these very, very well so that there's not any contamination on them. And then that will go in the net cup to support the basil. Well, we've already hit our first snag, and this just goes to show you the genius of the methodology measure twice, cut once, or, just to be really certain about what it is that you're doing. This net cup is too big for this mason jar. I do have a solution that I'm going to try that's not going to require me to go out and get another net cup. It was something that I was intending to do anyways, and hey, we'll get to walk through that process. Right, so what I'm going to do to fix the problem of this being too big is basically just make a custom one. I was able to use these calipers to figure out the measurements, went through a couple of iterations. My roommate has a 3D printer, and he's pretty well experienced with it, so he knows what needs to happen in order to get the best printing results. Went through a couple different ideas, and this is what we've ended up with. 56mm at the base is the outside diameter. That'll fit snugly into the mason jar and give a little bit of leeway. At the top, going up at a 45-degree angle means that I won't need supports, but it won't fall into the jar, and that is sort of the main concern here. It doesn't actually need to, you see how this comes in like in a cone shape? It doesn't need to do that. This is most likely just for manufacturing purposes, so it's easy to just pop them off. But in this case, it's actually going to give us better results to print it straight up. And then we looked at a couple different ways to do these holes. Having holes printed that are sort of like rectangular like that means that we'll need support. But if we do them in more of a diamond pattern, and I had a couple different ideas, we ended up going with this here, making sure that the width of the material between the holes is going to be enough that it'll have structural integrity. We can print them in diamonds so that we can get what we need. And then this is just an example. This is actually something that my roommate created and printed to hold D&D minifigures. So you can get some pretty decent results if you know what you're doing and put in the time. So the next step is going to be to get into Blender and get this printed, or not printed, but get this modeled. Right, so what I've done here, I covered the mason jar in aluminum foil. The reason I did this is so that when it's covered, no light gets in, and like I said, we don't want an algae bloom. But this is where this blue painter's tape comes in, because I can quickly grab, I left a little tab here, and I can pull it open so that I can look inside without having to take the plant out of the top to check my fluid levels, and then I can stick it back down. It's not going to keep all of the light out with that tape on there, but it'll keep out enough of it that I shouldn't have too bad of an algal problem. Okay, so the print is done. Ended up being about a 7-hour print. And here we go here. I didn't end up doing the model. The plan initially was for me to do it, but my roommate volunteered to, since he knows his printer and knows what the printer wants in order to have a successful print. As far as why it's this color, the material that we printed this in, we found that this color tends to give the best results as far as the prints go. So let's see if it fits. Like a glove. And the next thing that I need to do is get a cutting of one of my basil plants. Now, I could just dig up the plants because I know that they have roots, but I actually would like to clone one of my plants and have it produce new roots. So, this guy here, you can see there's a node right about there that has a bit of growth coming off of it. So I'm going to cut just below that because that node is where this plant is going to want to shoot roots out from. I'm going to go in here with my snips, a bit of an angle, and a bit lower than that, and just snip it. So here we have our cutting. Like I said, we got the node at the bottom. I'm going to probably keep these leaves as they are. I'll remove the one that's got that browning on it. But the next thing that I need to do after this is I have this rooting powder. And all that I need to do is open it up when I'm ready and take my cutting and dip it in the powder, stir it up a bit so that it will cover, and that will tell this plant that it's time for it to start producing new roots. Now, you don't need rooting powder for this to work. My cat. It will work without the rooting powder, but the rooting powder will give it a bit of a head start. So that's what we will do now. So I have my rock wool cube here. This is what we're going to put that cutting into and insert into our net basket that we 3D printed. Now I've already tried to put this in here and it's actually a little too big. Luckily, this material isn't particularly robust, so I'm just going to just manually rip bits of this away until it fits better into this net pot before soaking it in the nutrient solution and putting our cutting in here. So I went ahead and mixed up the growing fluid here with the nutrients in it. It was 5 milliliters per gallon of the calcium magnesium, or CalMag, and then this was what was recommended to me by the local hydroponic shop. Has a little scoop in it that's a teaspoon, and so it was a teaspoon of this stuff for this gallon here. You don't need these specific products. A local hydroponic shop or even like Amazon will have something similar. And there's plenty of information online as to what basil likes for its growing solution. So we have over here our rockwool cube, which is now a rockwool cylinder. I tore away at it a bit so that it would fit into our 3D printed net cup. And I'm just going to take the eyedropper, the pipette that I used to take the CalMag and put it into solution here to pre-soak our rockwool cylinder. Right. Got it about as soaked as I feel like I need to. So we'll come over here and I will grab my basil cutting, which I dipped in the rooting powder, which you can see there at the end. Hello, cat. And I'm just going to put that right into that rockwool cube. Now that we have this situated, the next thing to do is going to be to put it into our mason jar. So I'll do that. And now I need to fill this with solution. Now I don't want to drown the plant, so I'm only going to put a very small, I will raise the fluid level so that just a very small portion of this cube is covered. And remember, that's why we have this painter's tape here. With the painter's tape back, I can see inside of the mason jar so that I can get a good idea of where my fluid level is. And then when I tape that back off, it will block out enough light that I don't get an algal bloom in there. So I filled in the nutrient solution. You can see the line there where the water is. I probably did a little too much. Of course, I can pour out if I need to, but I'm gonna see if this works for now. The majority of the plant is still not submerged, so I don't think it'll drown. But I'll monitor it over the next couple days. If it looks like it's not doing it, probably monitor it for about a week, because that's about when you would want to start seeing roots. Because obviously, like, this plant's just been through a lot of trauma. I mean, I cut it and moved it to a different location. It's probably going to be a little upset for a little bit. Totally normal. So we'll cover this with the tape, and the next thing that we're going to do is prep the expanded clay cubes that I'm going to, or expanded clay balls that I'm going to be using to better support this plant in our net cup. So this is the Hydroton original expanded clay pebbles that I'm going to be using. You can use other growing substrates as well. I've heard of mixing like cocoa and perlite. There's plenty of stuff you can use, but this is just what I'm choosing to use. The main purpose of this is to support the plant while it's growing. This isn't going to hold on to any of that nutrient solution. Right now that's what the rockwool's for, but once the plant grows roots down into the solution, won't even need the rockwool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this sieve here and put about enough pebbles in here to fill up my net cup with the plant in it. and I'm going to rinse it very thoroughly. As you can see, this is a very dusty material here. It's been sitting in this bag, through transport and stuff. So we just need to make sure that there's not a lot of sediment left on it before we put it in our net cup. And here we have it. The clay pebbles are in there. The plant is nice and supported. It's not going to crush itself under its own weight as the roots start to grow. The one final thing I'm going to do, just to try to keep the environment that this thing is in nice and moist, is I'm going to take this clear cup and put it over the top. And what that will do is, as the water evaporates and the plant respirates and stuff, it will it'll get nice and foggy in there and keep it moist. There we go. Here we are back at the grow shelf. I've got my new cutting under the lights, and we'll monitor it over the week, see what happens. I've prepped 2 other of these mason jars. I'm not going to put cuttings in them yet. I want to make sure that this process works first, and that's the same reason why I'm going to keep this other pot of basil around, at least for a little bit. Now, if this works and this starts to take off, I'm going to repot that cactus into that bigger pot, and I'll use some more of these basil stalks to scale into the other mason jars here. Now, the purpose of me documenting this was because this was my first time doing this, and I knew I was going to encounter some issues, which we did. The mason jars that I got were not big enough for the net cups. Now, I could have gone back to the hydroponic store or to Amazon and gotten smaller net cups. It would have been the faster solution, but instead I wanted to try 3D printing. So now I have this custom net cup here that I can print anytime that I need to, but you don't need to do that. You could just get another net cup, or there's a number of things you could do. You could make your own net cups. I mean, you probably could even use something like that clear cup I have and some shears or something to make it. So I will link below the main tutorial that I used for this. It's by a channel named Slightly Vegan. Very, very similar process, to the point that I feel like I have to link it. I'll also link to, there's a channel named Hoocho's, and there's a lot of really neat hydroponic stuff on there. He was the person that I initially wanted to get into this because of, so I will link to him as well, and we'll see what this looks like in a week.